Welcome back to the second volume of Faculty in Focus, where we blur the lines between the work done by Ohio State Lima faculty and the greater Allen County community. I'm your host, Maggie Young, and throughout Faculty in Focus, we will explore Ohio State Lima faculty interests and how they relate to the greater Allen County region. For our second volume of Faculty in Focus, we decided to talk about faculty firsts. There's so much excitement and novelty with the start of a new school year. I thought it might be interesting to look at how our faculty developed their teaching and research skills. Today, we have Professor Ed Valentine, Professor of Art, and he'll be discussing his journey to Ohio State through art. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us today.
Thank you.
I would like to just get started asking the question that I love asking artists, and that's, when did you get started? How did this process begin for you?
Well, for me, it was always sort of an alternative to sports. I was never really really never ever any good at sports. In fact, there's an online art magazine dedicated to. It's based in Chicago, and it's called Bad at Sports. I think a lot of artists actually. People just you want to stay active as a kid, and if athletics is not your thing, then it might be reading. It might be something more scientific. But with me, it's just always been drawing, and drawing led to painting, and painting led to everything else.
Well, and you and I have chatted before about how individuals, like young children, they love to draw, and that sometimes there's like a tipping point where they stop, and that apparently didn't happen for you, did it?
No, it doesn't. One of the tipping points is you can see it in young children's drawings, 6 years old. The tipping point kind of is where they start to realize that it's something other than what they've been doing. There's a point where you can look at a child's drawings and they'll do a portrait of their family, and everybody will be standing on a horizontal line. And then at a certain point, they start raising that horizontal line so families stand on different lines. And I think that's when it becomes a little bit more complex. And for me, that complexity was really interesting.
Awesome. And so then you studied art? Did you do it like independently, or you just kept drawing for fun, and then you went to school for art, or?
I went to a Catholic school in the 50s and 60s, so there wasn't really any art program. We drew a little bit, and then in high school it was basically just charcoal and newsprint. But luckily I had a nun who suggested that I go to Saturday morning art classes at the Columbus College of Art and Design. So from about sophomore year to senior year, I took the Saturday morning art classes, and that really did just turn me on to the possibilities of what art could be. And then from there, I went to same college.
So to the same college. Okay. And so tell me what that was like for you in college. What did you study?
That was really, really, really exciting because, again, I mean, it's true today like it was 15, 20, 30 years ago. If you're not good in athletics, you're sort of part of the underclass. So suddenly I go to art school and everyone there wanted to be an artist. So I finally sort of found a group of people who I really, really got along with. And seriously, it was sort of like, have you ever heard of the children's book, Leo the Late Bloomer?
Yeah.
So I sort of felt like Leo the Late Bloomer because it just happened in art school. All of a sudden I realized there's a whole bunch of us who want to be artists.
And so you wanted to be an artist. So
yeah.
What were you studying when you were in college? I mean,
I was lucky enough to go to a really, really, really strict art school. We had anywhere between 7 and 9 classes a semester. Some of them were just 1 or 2 hour classes that met once a week, but the school that I went to, the walls were all painted gray. There weren't any windows. There were no distractions. We worked. You could take a walk around the neighborhood at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and see everybody's lights on where they were still working. So I was lucky enough to have a really, really strict art school where before we could do figure drawing, we had to learn anatomy. We had to memorize every muscle in the body, every bone in the body. Before we were able to take a painting class, we had to take a really strict class on color concept and composition. So it was more like an academy rather than what we recognize as an art school today.
Oh, that's fascinating. But I mean, it does kind of open up the idea that, we sometimes think about, artists as just being gifted, with these talents, but really it's a craft. It's something that you studied. It's something that
It's
you
an
have to,
acquired skill.
yeah,
I tell them at the get-go, it's not something you're born with, it's an acquired skill. It's just like anything else. I mean, you have to learn to write probably before you can read. You have to, I mean, there's a process that you need to follow, and A comes before B, B comes before C. And once you hook up with that sequence, then you realize that it is an acquired skill. I mean, my wires are probably wired differently than some people, but I don't know that it had that much difference, makes that much of a difference.
that you're an artist rather
Yeah,
than,
I'm an artist. Yeah,
that,
people like to say you're a visual thinker, but I don't think they actually know what visual thinking is. Visual thinking has really nothing to do with art. No, it doesn't. It's more about that's probably a whole other story that I shouldn't get into. But it's not a right brain thing. It's not a left brain thing. It's just something that if it interests you, you pursue it. If you have any sense of adventure at all, and
oh, I
plus.
love it.
I started art school in 1969, so it was a really good time to be a hippie artist. It was a great time to be a hippie artist.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So then your focus switched to painting during your time at art school, right? And that really has kind of been your focus as a professional artist, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it has. It's oh, I'm not quite sure why. It still fascinates me. Most of my paintings are, although it's not the first hit that you get, but most of them are simply paintings about the process of painting. If I had to be really honest, most of my paintings are paintings for other painters. There is something in there for everybody else, but it really is. It's more about process, and it's more about referencing art history as far back as the Renaissance and even contemporary art. It really is it's painting about painting, and that sounds a little bit eggheady, but it actually isn't. It's just it keeps you going.
Right. And I think that if you bring in that historical context, or if you're focusing on the process, then it does give you perhaps a bit more longevity,
I think
and
so. Yeah.
interesting things to think about continually, more new. I mean, like that's the
Yeah.
wonderful thing about the artistic disciplines, is that you have
No,
more
and it
new.
is. And the other thing that gives it longevity is not really knowing what the painting is going to look like when I start. I have a general idea, but the other way would be illustrating, and I don't illustrate. One bit might happen as an accident, and that triggers another aspect to the painting. So oftentimes, although it does sort of stay within a certain realm, oftentimes I have no idea what the painting's going to look like when as it ends. I mean, I do set a color scheme, and I have a composition set, and I have maybe an image that I want to put in the painting, a couple of textures, but I think that's why I've been painting for so long, is because it always still surprises me.
That's awesome. So then, how did you end up in Northwest Ohio?
Actually, I lived in Manhattan for the longest time, had a lot of shows. I love Manhattan, but my son was turning 9, and my wife and I promised that he wouldn't see 10 years old living on the Bowery in Manhattan. I mean, it was the perfect artist life, living in a loft on the Bowery, Lower East Side, part of that whole scene in the 80s and early 90s. So we ended up in Delaware, Ohio, and I was painting houses. I was doing anything to make money, and then all of a sudden I realized I should go back to grad school. So I went back to grad school, taught on main campus for 5 years, and then an opportunity came up to start an art program out here. There wasn't an art program. There were a couple of classes being taught, but they weren't following the curriculum, and they were advanced level classes, beginning level classes. It was just all over the place. So my chair asked me if I wanted to come out here and start it. I promised my wife that my wife lives an hour away, a walk away from school, and my son was a senior in high school. So I said, we'll do it. We not that I have anything against Lima. I love Lima, but I wasn't going to uproot her and my son. So I drive every day from Delaware, Ohio. It's like a 160-mile round trip. So there's the long answer to a simple question.
The long answer to a simple question.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So you talked a little bit about teaching. So what do you like about teaching here at Ohio State Lima?
But probably all the cliche answers is what I'm going to say. I mean, it really is fun to see that light go off when they come in. Everybody's scared. They think, like we were saying earlier, that drawing is like a God-given skill, a talent that you're born with. And I start to explain to them that it's an acquired skill, but they're scared of it. The same way people are scared of math. They think they're not going to be able to do it. Oftentimes people will come to me and say, I want to take your drawing class, but I don't know how to draw. And I instantly say, well, that's exactly why you would take the class. I think they think they're supposed to come in with a certain amount of skill. So they come in, they fumble, then they start to build some confidence. And then about midterm, you can just start to see that it all starts to make sense to them. For me, that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I keep coming back to it.
I love it. So, I mean, just as our last kind of closing question, do you have any advice for an aspiring artist or an aspiring teacher?
I would say to the aspiring teachers, and I really, really, really have thought about this over and over and over again. When you're in the classroom, it's not about you. It isn't about you, and it is a job. You're not there to let them know how smart you are. You're there to let them know that they're smart. And you really have to sometimes just bite your bottom lip, because it can be a really difficult process to sort of get them involved. But once they realize that you are there for them, they almost, I mean, maybe just strictly out of guilt, feel like they need to participate a little bit more, you know?
I love it.
As far
And
as
for
the
the,
art as far as art goes, there's an old joke, and the joke is, what does the arts graduate say to the engineering graduate? And the answer is, would you like fries with that order? So basically what it is depending on, if you're going to be a fine artist, you need to find some way to make money, because there's a really good chance that you are going to maybe do fantastic work. But if it's not trending right now, you'll either quit, or you will wait tables, or you'll drive a truck or a cab or whatever. The advice is, you're going to need a job if you're going to be a fine artist. If you're a commercial artist, then you have to hustle for the gig. That's what it is.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I was talking with one of my students about that as well, that like, as an artist, you need to have it in your life, regardless of whether or not you're getting paid for it. I mean, but to do it for yourself. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes all we need is to practice our art and to share it with those around us, even if we don't get paid for it.
Yeah. And oftentimes we're not going to get paid for it. I mean, I've probably had some years where I could survive off what I sold in painting, but then there might be another year that goes, although I've been cranking out the paintings, there might be a year where maybe I've just made $5,000 or $6,000, and you just can't live like that.
Right. Well, Ed, I so appreciate your honesty, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us for this episode of Faculty in Focus. I want to say congratulations for joining the select group of OSU Lima faculty who are invited to our little mug club as part of our focus on faculty scholarship, both inside and outside of the classroom. For those of you watching at home, be sure to check out our other episodes of Faculty in Focus on the Ohio State Lima YouTube channel. From all of us here at OSU Lima, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Faculty in Focus. Until next time.
Thanks, Maggie.